Hi guys, Togri here with a new video, and this video will be a Arms Warrior PvP guide video for 10.1.5 of Dragonflight. And I actually pinpointed finally a build where I am enjoying it, but also have somewhat good success with it, with the few games I'm playing with this build, and it does feel better than I would say anything I've played until now, except season 1. I think season 1 was the pinnacle of being like full crit, like 30% crit. Actually feeling like a Wrath of the Lich King PvP warrior, because you already critted a lot in Wrath, but it's a bit the same in Dragonflight. Right now it's a bit diminished, but I have now the ideal guide for you guys. It is the ultimate guide. It is the guide that actually gives you the most amount of damage, the things that are actually fun about warrior, not the affliction warlock, melee warlock, actually trying to bleed the people out, trying to play around dampening, trying to just like AoE them out with bleeds and such. No, nothing about that. You do a lot of AoE damage because of sweeping strikes, but that's it. And also Blaze Storm. Now guys, I'm going to pinpoint everything you want to know. We're going to talk about embellishments, the ones I'm using. The one and only stats that you want to go for the best amount of damage you can go. 2 set or 4 set or no set. We're going to discuss about that as well, which is also very important. Enchants, gems, whatever. We're going to discuss about that as well. And we're going to discuss about the build, why this build and not another one. I will talk about the strengths about an Arms Warrior, the weaknesses about an Arms Warrior, and also about trees, twos, soul shuffle, RPGs, everything about that in the comps section. And we're going to discuss about the rotation, the basic rotation, and then the burst rotation, whenever you want to actually pump the enemy down. And we're going to talk about macros really briefly at the end of the video. I want to start right away with setting the expectations. We are not S tier, no matter what. There is like a threes, which is again somewhat you're choosing your own team. So of course the comps that you're going to play are quite good comps, like Shadow Priest with an Arms Warrior, very good. Even Mage Arms Warrior, even actually Arcane Mage with an Arms Warrior is actually very nasty to play against. I would say Retribution Paladin Arms Warrior is not feeling as good as before. TSG is something you can play still, and we're going to discuss about it in comms. But that is actually what makes Arms Warrior very strong. I think in twos and Soul Shuffle, you're pretty mid-ish, average to good tier. You can make it sometimes work depending on the people that you're facing and the comps and the lobbies that you're facing in Shuffle. But you don't really have like a say on everything. If you're like landing in lobby versus an arcane mage, frost mage, and then a boomy, for example, and you're the only melee, you're going to suffer regardless. It doesn't matter. You're going to probably hide most of the time, and the one time where you can burst, you will have to make it count, which is often not the case versus people that actually knows how to play. But that is just how shuffle is. And 2v2, you just have like natural enemies that are currently very strong, and that makes it a bit harder for you to exist in those lobbies. But you can make it work probably, but it will be a lot harder, let's say, than a survival hunter with a resto druid or a holy priest, for example. Anyhow, that was the introduction. I want to talk about now the embellishments. First and foremost, I think the stats, the masteries, and the stats you want to go for, which is mastery. I play now kind of full mastery, although I'm still in the transition of going a bit less haste, a bit less crit. But full mastery feels very nice. So it means in PvP combat I have like 35%, 36% mastery, which again, it adds up. It is 35%. You're going to deal increased damage to the enemy, and you can also cleave with that with Blade Storm, for example. And then you can also have other modifiers, which is Avatar, Colossus Smash, the Blade Storm modifier, and Spear of Bastion modifier, which is in my build. You have a lot of modifiers which can end up doing 145k overpowers. I also put a screenshot in the community post so you can also see it. But it was on a demon hunter and we did a lot of damage. There was no augmentation evoker with us. So the damage is very, very high. But I'm going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses a bit further. But it is feeling good. Is it the most meta spec? I think for me it is the meta spec. It is the only spec I want to play right now. The only build I want to play right now with Arms Warrior. There is no other build that will make me actually enjoy Arms Warrior, and this is actually the one that I'm playing. So we're playing with a lot of mastery, which also works with Fury, because I'm going to talk about tomorrow's, Friday's video, excuse me, also a Fury PvP video, a guide video where I'm going to discuss about as well, which you also want to go full mastery to do optimal damage. That's already a spoiler for you guys, but I'm going to explain everything I have discussed about arms. I'm going to do as well for Fury, but more in depth about Fury. So we want to go for mastery. We have limit critical strike and limit haste. Of course, you will have some trinkets, like for example, double trinket is quite nice. You get crit and you get haste, for example, for a human. But if you're like a anything else than human, you would go for the crit one, the unused one, which is the more practical one. For enchants, you want Sophic Devotion, you want mastery everywhere. I do not care. Just go full mastery. You could also go for versatility, but again, depends on how much you can have without sacrificing anything. Because it has a lot of like diminishing returns if you want to go above 30%. Of course, if you're like 40% versatility, it is basically 10% increased mastery, right? But because you have more damage at all times. But you have to see an odd way. For me, I think mastery is more worth it to actually jam than versatility right now. You have the helm, which is an embellishment. I want to replace that. I want to actually go for the Zen one. So whenever you are like high HP, you get more mastery. That is the one I want to build right now. But I'm actually waiting for the conquest points, and I will make a primal molten helm, I think, with mastery verse, and I will take the embellishment, which is the Zen embellishment. So that is the one I want to talk about. We get like the versatility mastery neck. We go for the conquest one because it gives a lot more versatility. You do want to have 30% at least. I go for 70 mastery, 33 versatility, and I will build a primary stat and mastery gem very soon. We have, of course, we have a bad cloak, but you still want to have verse mastery in homebound speed. I do like that as well. A sustained strength on your chest. I'm going to discuss about the 2 set, the 4 set, whenever we are at that point. And we have plus 200 speed at our wrists, which I will replace to a full mastery wrist, which without versatility. So you have a wrist with like one secondary stat, which gives a lot. So it will be around 400 mastery increase, which is quite nice to have, especially on wrists. It gives you like a nice boost. So you will have around, I guess, very close to 40% mastery once you have like made the switch towards mastery if you can. We play with the successfully applying a loss of control effect, which is applied by a charge, for example. 510 primary stat, but also applied with pummel, applies with stormbolt. So you're going to apply it naturally, and since the damage is very consistent from Arms Warrior, you always are actually doing damage. As with this build, it's always going to be good to have like a primary stat increase. And plus also your alacrity insignia that is going to pop whenever it actually is popping. So especially if you're a human, like it's very cool to have like 2 trinkets. We take 2 crafted first mastery rings. They are both very nice, and I do like that as well. Like again, mastery is king for me right now. It's also working for my Fury build, but also for my protection build. So I'm going to discuss about everything in this coming week. Now let's talk about 4 set or 2 set. So I made a lot of testings, and the 4 set is the worst of the game. You do not want the 4 set for Arms Warrior, but also not for Fury Warrior. I'm going to discuss about it in the Fury section Friday, but for Arms Warrior, you want to drop 4 set. It is not worth it. And yes, it is normally a again, it's 10% divided by 2 because it's in PvP. So you have like 15% increased damage on your more strike. That's all right. That's cool, but it rarely gives you that. Why? Because you have deep wounds critical strikes going to have a chance to increase the damage. But the problem is you're not holding your more strike at all times. You're actually throwing more strikes because you are actually you have a lot of rage. You want to actually spend it, and to get overpowered procs, to then use those overpowered procs to get another more strike, to actually get your cities back up very, very quickly. And of course, with mastery, you will have those CDs a bit less quickly because with haste, you have more global. So, of course, you will have a faster Colossus Smash and faster Blade Storm. That's all right. But what I like about not having a 4-set, it means that I can actually choose my stats. The 4-set is heavily biased towards crit. Crit is not a good stat anymore, especially for arms, but also for fury. So you do not want that. And also, it's a 15% chance. Again, you're going to spend it, so more likely it will be 5%, or more likely it will be 10%. But not often it will be 15% increased damage on more strike. And the AoE breaks CC, so it is stupid to play that, especially in shuffle, whatever. Actually, breaking CC sometimes makes you lose a game. In threes as well, yes, you're cleaving, you're making more damage, and still the damage is still not that good, actually, because in PvP it is also reduced, so you will not do nearly the same damage as on a dummy. And it is also physical damage, which is even more reduced. Sometimes you will do like 5k physical damage, which is laughable. Again, laughable, which you can actually add with mastery or like more crit or more haste. Actually, more everything gives you more damage than this. So do not go 4-set. I know that some people like swear 4-set arms is good. No, it isn't. Test to play without 4-set and you're going to be good. What I do recommend is the 2-set for arms and fury. So you do want to have 2-set. Deep wounds, increasing your chance to critical strike by 2.5%, but also the damage you're dealing by 2.5%. It is a straight buff towards your crits and your crit chance. You will always have a deep wounds, and it is extra, I guess. It's like you're getting 2.5% crit on your gear for free. That's pretty much it. And you can actually have some pieces which are quite nice. For example, I do like the mastery haste shoulders, because I do not have, like, I don't need to have more versatility than I actually need. I just need 30%. That's the one thing I really need. Underneath, like 29% is still alright, but I do not really want 31% or 32% because it means that it is actually diminishing returns, and you could have another stat for better stats allocation. So for example, the shoulders I do keep. Then you have a choice between your hands or your chest. I would replace my chest for a mastery verse chest, and I would just keep the hands because it has a less stats allocation. So I would have more mastery, more versatility with my chest, and I would just lose a bit of mastery that I could have on my hands. But I'm actually fine having haste versatility. So I would recommend to keep shoulders and gloves. And for the rest, that is pretty much the stats you want. 2-set is also very important for Fury, and yes, for Protection Warriors, it actually is good to go 4-set, but again, you will have a lot more gear coming weeks, so you will have the opportunity to have multiple sets in your bags. One thing I want to note, again, I want to replace the helm, so I want to replace the helm, I want to replace the chest, because I want full mastery. I actually want to also replace my belt, if possible. But having a bit of haste is not that bad. Like I have 11%, I think, in PvP, which is actually quite nice because it is reducing globals. Do I want to have less? I mean, I could go less. I will go less probably by changing the chest, but it is not like vital to me, right? I'm okay. I'm fine to have 35% mastery, although I would like to have 40% mastery. That is the stats. Again, you want to have the mastery verse weapon, which is good because polearm is actually the one that is actually available with Conquest. That's actually very nice. I'm actually going for that these days. Now let's talk about the juicy part, the build. And I'm going to make a lot of people cry, but this is the build which I'm having the most fun with. This is the build. This is the one and only build. And there is a lot of things that you can actually switch depending on situations, but this one is actually the most fun for me. I'm going to talk about the class tree a bit first, but it didn't really change too much with the patches, so I'm not going to delve too hard into it, same for spec. I'm going to give you the reasoning behind it. So we have all the goodies. We have the CC, we have the slows with Bursting Howl, we have Intervene, we have Rallying Cry, we have Stormbolt, we do lose Shockwave. I'm going to explain why in a few seconds. We win Honed Reflexes, which a lot of people are actually not taking, but I do take it because I do like having overpowered more often. And yes, sometimes You will not have a proc, and having like 1 second on overpower kind of sometimes make difference. I know it's like very little, but you do got a second on pummel, which is not a bad thing. And you could even go for cast whenever you're playing versus heavy casters. You can play concussive blows, which is reducing the damage, which is increasing the damage you're dealing to the enemy, but also having reduced pummel, which is always going to be fine. It will be a 30 seconds pummel, which is very Gucci. I'm playing with Wrecking Throw because there's a lot of people with shields, but you could also play Shattering Throw whenever you're facing mages. Not that you're going to cast it more often because they're going to stop you most likely, but still, it's an option that you have. You could also just remove Frothing Berserker and removing by the same time the Wrecking Throw and go for Pain and Gain and go Reinforced Plates. So you have like just 1 point that you're going to spend on Pain and Gain and gain 2 points here, so you can actually spend it somewhere else. But that's your choice. It depends on the people you're going to face. One thing I'm taking is the Blood and Thunder, so it will make Thunderclap actually very expensive in Rage. It is what it is, but you don't have to maintain it too well because you will have a rent on everyone, which is effectively going to be nice because you're still losing a global by pressing rent. And you have a bloodletting, which whenever someone is low HP, you're going to more strike and it will inflict rent on the target. So all in all, I'm not using rents too much these days. I'm just using Thunderclap whenever I'm in AoE and have like an excess of rage, which automatically will give me a bit of overpowers. But also just in general, I'm using more strike whenever they're low, and it will be the same, right? So that is pretty much how I play. Now to the good stuff. I'm not playing with Shockwave because I'm playing currently with Spear of Bastion. And Spear of Bastion is maybe the worst ability right now for warriors if you're not using it right. And I'm saying that with a big if. If you're using Spear of Bashing at the start of the match and as an opener, guaranteed the enemy will have something to stop it or just to walk away from it. Not everyone is going to expect the Spear of Bastion, let alone you're not using it at the start of the match. What warriors are actually doing right now is charging in Spear of Bastion directly, and that is actually a huge waste because like a priest just fades away and will just go out, which effectively gives like a 1.5 minute CD owned by a 20-second CD fade. So do not use it there. What you have to do with Spear of Bastion is actually time it to a point where, look, the priest just used Fade. This is the moment. Stormbolt into Spear of Bastion. Boom, that guy is defenseless. He has to disperse or he has to eat the full Blade Storm into a more strike, which I'm going to explain it very quickly. This is going to be a lot of damage. If you actually have full value of Spear of Bastion, it actually is a very good usage or a very good skill. Now, if you're using it like without thought and you're thinking like, look, I'm using Spear of Bastion because I want to engage with it, just remove those 2 points and go somewhere else because it's useless, because you're going to effectively make Spear of Bastion a bait ability, which is fine, which is something I'm doing on my Fury Warrior. Whenever I'm playing Spear of Bastion, I'm actually just using it for the bait. People are going to use their CDs, and then whenever they don't have a CDs, it is go time. That's pretty much how I play with my Fury Warrior, but with my Arms Warrior, I have to play a bit more methodical because we don't have damage like a Fury Warrior currently, and we are more grounded than a Fury Warrior, in my opinion, without Blood Rage, excuse me. So Spear of Bastion is the one I'm playing. Why am I not playing about Thunderous Roar? Because we do not take any modifier towards the bleeds. And yes, we're taking Bloodletting, but that is the only modifier you're taking for bleeds. Rend is effectively just pad with this build. It is not going to do a lot of damage, and we accept that because we're going to do a lot more damage with other parts of the build. We take, of course, the two-handed weapon specialization, which is giving you 5% increased damage. And of course, we're going to take the good old Blade Master Stormant, which effectively is making the build a lot more fun, a lot more active. And since Blade Storm, you take the PvP talent, and yes, you're losing a PvP talent for it, but you do get a 1 minute CD Blade Storm, which is going to be reduced with Anger Management. You're effectively going to have a 40-second Blade Storm, which is basically going to give you another avatar go with, of course, the good old Hurricane, which I'm going to discuss right away. That is the way you're going to play. You can also play with Warlord's Torment, But again, the thing is about that is that I'm not really finding crits so good. Although whenever it crits with this build, it does feel nice. Going for purely recklessness and trying to crit and sometimes not critting while you have this is actually feeling super bad for the build. Because if you have recklessness up because of World's Torment and you're not critting, effectively you are using a talent that is actually dead. That is pretty much it. And if you're facing a Hansa, which is kind of going to sack themselves, or anything that actually can reduce your CDs, like for example, Holy Paladin with Denounce, you will have no value with recklessness. It doesn't matter if you have 100% crit or 0% crit versus them. I would just play with Blade Master's Torment and just try to hope for a crit, but if you're not critting, you're still going to kill people. So that is the build. Now let's talk about the spec, the spec tree. So you're going to say, why am I not playing with Bloodborne? Because we're not playing with Thunderous Roar, so we have less value. And since we're not playing with Thunderous Roar, we're not going to take Bloodborne. It is also 2 points that you have to spend. I would also like to not play with Rend, but there is no other point I can spend elsewhere that is actually worth to take. I tested the Whirlwind, it doesn't do damage, it actually does the same damage as a Mortal Strike and does less than an Overpower with Dreadnought, so why bother? Also, collateral damage is not really reliant because people are just going to see you, so you will not have a lot of values with it to actually like compensate the loss of Storm of Swords. Cleave is bad, I do not like it. It's actually just the same as a Mortal Strike. I think it also makes Mortal Strike go on CD, I think. I'm not sure about it. I actually never tested it, but the damage is very underwhelming in general anyways. And we're taking with blunt instruments. I know some people swear by Warbreaker, but you can just sweeping strikes Colossus Smash, it would be the same result. And then the duration is actually increased, and also the damage is also increased. And whenever you're critting, it does feel like I. In for the kill, which gives you haste. Again, this is a Test of Might is unfortunately nerfed in PvP. If it was not nerfed in PvP, it would be taken, but it is not the case. We're taking Ignore Pain. There are moments where I'm wondering if Stormwall could be nice because people are not noticing it. Because again, everyone plays with Ignore Pain, but you don't really have a lot of meaty lobbies. I do feel like Ignore Pain is the better talent, and what it should do is Stormwall, put it with Fueled by Violence, and I actually make them like a choice node instead of Ignore Pain. But that is my opinion. I think people will not agree with me because it would make warriors a bit too tanky, but I think that is the way to go for arms. Anyways, we're taking the right to blows because we are wanting to do a lot of more strike with this build. Execute is going to be very important. And now the good thing, we're taking everything, every single modifier for more strike and every single modifier for overpower. So we have more damage for overpower, we have more damage for overpower, we have execute damage with fatality, although with paladins they just pop it and it's gone, but it is what it is. Bloodletting, which is again a modifier and which goes again, also a free rent with more strike, mastery increase with depth experience, and also more tacticians procs, which is also quite nice. We have, of course, following victory because why not take it? It's free, it's only 1 point. Blade Storm, doing a lot of damage with this build. This build is actually doing like sometimes a tick. I did a tick of a Blade Storm, a tick, not even crit, of 50k. I think it was very lucky because it was like I was full buffed. I had like double trinket plus also Sophic Devotion popped. I already had Hurricane with the Avatar, and then I did a Blaze Storm, and that was the damage. It did a lot of damage on the Shadow Priest, which is one of the more tankier casters in the game. So it does a lot of damage. It gives you movement speed. There is nothing you can actually imagine to actually take Unhinged. I think Unhinged is the worst PvP like talents right now on the tree because it reduces the damage of more strike. So why bother overpowering? Because you're going to double overpower often, and then you're going to sharpen blade, and then of course you're going to Blaze Storm because you think you're going to do a lot of damage for it, but you're going to do the same damage as a normal Mortal Strike, which is quite underwhelming. But Hurricane, after you're done with the Hurricane, because it is unstoppable, nobody's going to stop you, you can actively do a Colossus Smash into a Mortal Strike and you're going to decimate someone. If it's not decimating anyone, you can still do double overpower most likely, and you will do a lot of damage with it as well. Overpower actually with this build does quite the same damage on more strike with multiple modifiers on it, so do not be afraid to do overpowers. Overpower actually do a lot of damage. I personally think overpower does more damage on more strike because of dreadnought, because you have to count those two together, and the damage is actually very, very big. And then you have also sharpened blades, going to increase the critical strike damage from your more strike and execute, and also the crit chance on execute. It is nerfed in PvP, unfortunately, but it is still worth to take. And we take execution's precision because why not? If you actually can have double stacks on it with every single modifier, you're going to do some sick damage. I managed to do with this build 200k crit or more strike on the DH, and I managed to do a 145k crit on the overpower, which is again mind-blowing. So imagine if you actually can do that more consistent, it will make it also more consistent. Now I'm going to talk about the PvP talents really quickly. We're taking a Restore of Destruction every single game. There is no discussion about it because you want to have as many Blaze Storms as possible, which effectively gives you more avatars, which effectively gives you more Hurricane procs, which effectively will just increase your consistent damage overall. So just go for Storm of Destruction. We're playing every single game Sharpened Blade, except if you're playing twos with another DPS and you feel like, no, not with another DPS, but you feel like you don't really need a reduced healing taken if you're facing double DPS, like for example Rogue Mage, you don't really need that. Although the increased damage is still always nice, so I'll still take it every single game. So those two are like every single game. And then you have War Banner, which is the most laughable stop to CC because people can notice it and just do one ability and it's gone. The people that are not noticing it, well, too bad for you. I'm actually like rolling on you guys, but if I notice like someone is breaking my War Banner every single time I'm actually putting it, I just drop it and I put somewhere else. I put it on demolition if it's like a warlock. I want to like shatter with my wrecking throw, or if I want to disarm versus let's say a warrior or a DK, which is useful, or a rogue. You can also duel if you feel like there is a lot of AoE pressure and you're not the target. It can actually help your team. You can also go for Warbringer. It's a bit of damage, but really it's not that worth it, but you can still go for it if you want. Rebound is actually not that good. It's increasing your CD to spell reflection, so it's a huge bait. They should actually just remove this 10-second CD. You don't really need to give a negative on a PvP talent, but anyways, that's my opinion. Shadow of the Colossus is not that good. But yeah, I mean, if you want to play that, you can play that. I guess in BGs it can be good. Mastering Commander is actually quite nice in RBGs. But I think Warbanner is probably better in RBGs because you can put it very far, and if they wanted to destroy it, they have to commit into your team, which often with a good TC will just like switch on to them. Death Sentence is not that good. It's clunky. I preferred it from in Shadowlands Season 1, and then they nerfed it and made it very clunky, so I don't like it anymore. Anyways, those are the PvP talents. I think those three are like insta pick, except whenever they're breaking your Warbanner every single game in Soul Shuffle, just remove it. It is not like, it's not useful to have a Warbanner for 1 second. It's useful whenever you can Warbanner and then don't destroy it like dumbasses, which often can happen in Shuffle, which is going to give you full value, but like it doesn't happen versus a good lobby. Anyways, I want to talk about strengths and weaknesses before we go for the further comps and rotations. Strength and weaknesses. Strength, the damage is good if you can actually have uptime. It is actually insane if you have uptime. The damage is actually very, very cool. I wonder if I can actually show some. So this one we lost, I think. Oh no, we actually won this one, I think. I did a roll strike of 125k. Very nice. My Blaze Storms hits for a lot. Execute actually hits for a lot. Spear of Bastion got some value, but really it can be stopped. Colossus Smash, Dreadnoughts, all of this is quite nice. And then you have like other matches where I'm actually destroying people. Here I did like an overpower 87k. It's very consistent, right? Dreadnoughts, so those two, it's like 25% of my damage, 24% of my damage, which is more than more strike, but more strike can crit for 113k with this build. Rend is doing laughable damage, but Rend is always doing laughable damage anyways, so even if you're building Rend and you're building bleed damage, it's still laughable. You're not an affliction warlock, goddammit. Execute, doing a lot of damage. In normal hit 103k, it's always welcome. Again, we can always show multiple games of them. Here, I just destroyed someone with Spear of Bastion into a Blaze Storm. Actually, Spear of Bastion did 94k, and then my Blaze Storm actually did a 48k crit. Again, the damage is really noticing. Here, this one is also a very nice one. Here we have the proof. We have a 145k crit. There is no pets. So if there was a pet, you would see the damage on the pet. This is not a pet. This is like literally the DH. DH was my target. Execute did a lot of damage. More Strike did a lot of damage. Blaze Storm 40k crits. I mean, this build feels alright because it is alright. The damage is really noticing, and if you're playing it correctly with the modifiers, which I'm going to show you in the rotations, you're going to do some very good damage. So that is the strength of a warrior. I think strength of a warrior, or at least an arms warrior, it is very modular into comps. You can play multiple comps, and there is no real comp where you're not working. You can even work double warrior if you want to, although I would not recommend it. Just go for unholy DK, you will have more fun. You can make every single comp work with a warrior because it is very flexible. You have intervene, you have some self heal is a healing, you have double charge, you have leap, which often than not leap is more interesting to actually leap out than leap in. You have stormbolt. Please stop leaping into stormbolt every single shuffle game. This is not the play. You have to play more intelligently, which is basically walk up with your horse, try to go as close as possible and try to hit overpowers if you can, and then go for a hamstring. Don't charge in because you're losing a charge because of they can actually use a root or whatever they can actually use to step away from you. So don't do that. Try to maintain ignore pain most of the games. It helps too with the healing part. Even if you're not the focus, it's always like deterring people from focusing you. Excuse me. I think overall arms is also quite fun to play with this build. I detest the bleed builds. I just do not like it. I liked it season 1 whenever I felt like bleeds was something special. Everyone is now playing bleeds because you have no choice. But I'm giving you the choice. Play something else, play my build. Now, weaknesses, I'm going to give you a warning. Again, in Shuffle, you're going to feel miserable most of your games because there are just maps, they are just comps, you have just people you're going to face in Shuffle that are going to make you insane. And sometimes you have an ally that doesn't know how to freedom you when they have unbarred freedom talented, or even worse, they don't even talent for it. Those are the Retribution Paladins that I'm going to point. So you guys, please go for unbound freedom your warrior. I was about to insult, but you get the picture, right? So warriors is actually very dependent. You cannot really solo carry. You can solo carry if they let you. If they're dumb and they're trying to go for your priest, like for example this game with the SP, they went for my priest. I just cleave them down and they're going to get like mauled down if they just survive. That's the way that you can actually win games. If they go for you, you have to play like a little P word. And just like leap out and try to survive as much as you can. That is just the way of an arms warrior, especially if they are frost mages or boomies or whatever, and they're rooting you and your heal is not dispelling you, you're going to feel miserable. So that's your weakness. Roots is going to make you feel miserable. Souls are going to make you miserable. The good thing is you have double blaze storm, which is going to augment your movement speed, so you have something to go for and to like look forward to. I think a lot of your kit is actually very counterable with just like a single bob. So a Holy Paladin lobby is actually feeling also very bad. If you're facing 2 Holy Paladins in that lobby, you're going to have a miserable time. And that is just how it is. So I'm just going to prepare you guys. Again, this build is going to be very fun. You can actually climb with it, but you should accept some lobbies are going to be a 0-6 or a 2-4 or a 3-3 or even a 1-5. It is just how it is. Sometimes you're going to go 6-0 because you have the perfect lobby and people are going to be mad because they cannot stop you, because it is the case, they cannot stop you. But if you are facing classes which are currently very popular, that is really going to be a problem for you if you don't have the right partner. Again, a TSG can do something about it, but Retribution Paladin is going to be eaten alive by a caster cleave if you have no coordination. So that is pretty much how I tell you guys. Weaknesses, they are stoppable. They are very stoppable, and they have clear weaknesses, which is roots, slows, distancing with blinks, do not go for arcane mage. You cannot like possibly catch up to them. If that's a tip, I'm going to give you a tip. If you can just ignore the mage and go for something else, you should do it. I know frost mages, if they're let alone, they can just ray of frost you, and you're going to get miserably like slowed, but also damaged. It is what it is. But they have too many mobility options to actually go away from you. And if they don't get away from you, they can always like push you away. They can also just polymorph you. They can also just root you, which often doesn't result to a dispel. So you have to be realistic. Try to go for the targets that you're going to kill. And yes, you have still the bleed build if you can still use it, although it's very simple. You just go for Bloodborne if you can, and you go for Thunderous Roar instead of Spear of Passion, and try to get uptime with bleeds. But again, it's pad damage. You're not an affliction warlock. But if you want to make it work as an affliction warlock versus those lobbies, I accept that. I understand that. You can go for that. But if you want to actually deal some good damage and you want to actually carry your games because of your damage, well, this build is the build. So, anyways, that's pretty much my words about it. Let's talk briefly about 3s, 2s, and social, because the video is already very long. 3s, you want to play with a caster. That is my recommendation. I know you can play TSG. I think Unholy DK can be seen as a caster too these days because their damage is very ranged. But you actually want a caster because they have a lot of CC, which, let's be honest, you don't have Shockwave. I'm not playing Shockwave because I'm playing like full damage on Spear of Bastion. I'm not really liking to waste a PvP talent on Barbaric Training or Seismic Reverberation, which is basically just lost talents. And then you get like 5% stamina, which is alright, I guess. But like the duration of a fear or a stab, we don't care because we have Berserker Rage. So again, you're taking a lot of talents which are dead talents to get Shockwave, which could be utilized somewhere else. So that's why I'm not taking it. I know that the AoE stun is quite cool, but again, we're often DRing ourselves. We are often DRing our allies because of it. So I'm not playing that. Of course, if you're playing with an ally which has no stuns, it's always nice to have a second stun. But what are the odds that it's happening in Soul Shuffle, right? So my recommendation, play with a caster. I would recommend to play with a Shadow Priest, with a Boomy, with a Arcane Mage, with a Frost Mage, with even a Fire Mage, even with a Warlock. Just play with a caster and you're going to have the best time of your life because people are going to focus your caster and they're not going to focus you, which gives you more option to go to the enemy. I think the best comp possible for current warrior is probably augmentation evoker because you're so squishy, you're so annoyed by roots, snares, whatever. They can actually just get out of roots for you because of like the Dragonflight. I think I don't know. It's PvP talent. Dream Breath. No, not Dream Breath. So it's a PvP talent that actually dispels. That's going to help you. Augmentation Evoker also gives you more damage. If they go for you, you have Blistering Scales, which is adding more damage to you. So again, Augmentation Evoker is probably the better one. Do you want to play with Augmentation Evoker though? I mean, you can choose it by yourself. I prefer to play with a Shadow Priest. They gave me PI, which is compensating the loss of haste, and I will do more damage with Mastery. But that's your choice. And they also have incredible CC, which is very, very fun as well. What else? Twos. Let's talk about twos. You want to play with a healer. You can play with a Retribution Paladin to double twos, but it's very, very... It's not squishy, but it's really... You're on a time bomb. You're either winning or losing very fast. It's fun, I guess. I do prefer to do it as a Fury Warrior instead of an Arms Warrior. I prefer to play with a healer. The preferred healers I would have is a Mistweaver, a resto shaman to a certain extent, although they are very trainable, and if they are trained, you're kind of forced to counter train, which often or not you do not really win the match. I also like to play with a holy priest and with a holy paladin. I don't really like to play with a resto druid. I'm going to explain why. They cannot really play aggressive with a warrior. If they're going cat form and they get stunned, cyclone, whatever, and you don't have anything to defend, you're going to die. It is just simple. While Shaman, if they get CC'd, most likely they have a healing stream totem and healing tide totem. They have things that can actually keep you alive. and more likely they're not going to play too aggressive from melee. They actually are from afar. And mistweaver, mistweavers, they are very annoying to deal with regardless because they're always melee, and it's very hard to CC just a mistweaver without breaking the CC because the arms warrior is really close. While cut form, again, they're rarely going cut form and doing damage. They're not going to do it like every single time. So whenever they're doing it, they get punished. They're getting actually very much punished. I prefer to not play with resto druid. My preferred ones are holy paladin, fistweavers, and resto shamans, and holy priest to a certain extent because they DR with fear. So I don't really like that. And solo shuffle, again, there are lobbies where you're going to be feeling incredible, which are the melee lobbies, physical lobbies. Those are very incredible. What I call the leather lobbies, so rogue, DH, monk are fantastic for a arms warrior. A feral druid, fantastic, because those are the lobbies where you're going to deal a lot of damage. Plate and mail, like for example shamans, for example retribution or DKs, which DKs is still very squishy, but still, I mean, it's plate still. You're going to deal a lot less damage because we're not for bleeds, right? We're like a lot of overpower damage, a lot of more strike damage, so you have to count about that as well. I know it's a lot of talk. I know it's like sometimes a bit you're going to feel sleepy when I'm talking, but I'm giving you a lot of information. You can do whatever you want about it, but I think the information is crucial because you have to be self-aware about your strengths, your weaknesses, and what to expect in those matches. Because you're going to say, "Oh, Greg, I love your build, but solo shuffle, we're getting destroyed out here." Well, I'm going to say sometimes you're getting destroyed. It is even not your fault, and that is just how it is. That's how shuffle is, and that's why in trees arms is actually very good, and that's why in shuffle they're actually very bad. So, and you're going to say why the difference? The difference is you're not choosing your allies. You don't have comms. I think arms is one of those warriors like melees that actually benefits from actually having comms, actually talking with people and saying whenever you're going to go for a go, because you can then just maximize your go. In shuffle, sometimes you're making your go and you cannot even utilize it because you're playing defensively because of your ally. So that's pretty much it. Now let's talk about rotation, which is the most fun part. Again, we have timestamps. You can always revisit the conversations and the more in-depth explanation I'm giving for every single point I'm actually talking about. Let's talk about the normal rotation. What you want to do is basically keep hamstring on the ally, try to get like overpowers on the enemy, try to do a thunderclap if you're like in AoE situation. You can also just rend if you want to, and then basically do overpowers whenever you can, and more strike to actually consume those two procs, and also execute whenever you have a sudden do proc because it's giving you a more damage about more strike. Like for example this one, boom, execution precision, giving us 11% more damage on more strike, which is always welcome. Yeah, and then of course that is pretty much the rotation. That's the basic rotation, and try to get like the piercing wall, try to do a lot of execute whenever you can, hamstring whenever you're going to actually like slow them, and thunderclap whenever you're in AoE, rend if you're in single target, sweeping strikes whenever you're in AoE, and try to cleave them both. It's always helpful. And wrecking throw whenever like they have a shield, and try to charge to actually catch up to the enemy. Try to look for a fear, for example, boom, that's a fear, and then you're going to stormbolt the enemy, for example, and then you have like a double CC, and it's ideal to go for a go, for example. So this is like basically how you're dealing damage, and you see the damage is not that bad, even consistent damage without any CDs. Reminder, more strike is not really bad damage in PvP because first and foremost it's physical. They have no verse or little to no verse dummies, and also you can actually stack 2 times overpower. So that's also the reason why you're not dealing the same damage as on a dummy as in PvP. It does 60% increased damage to more strike, while in PvP it does actually 9% times 2, so it's only 18%. So the damage is skewed on a dummy. But anyways, that is pretty much for the consistent damage, and try to get ignore pain up whenever you can. For the burst rotation, I'm going to give out multiple times. If I don't explain it correctly, if I explain it correctly, you should be aware of it. What you want to do, again, you can burst whenever you want. You're going to charge, you're going to do double overpower whenever you can, sudden doom whenever you can, and then you're going to blade storm, pretty much. And then you're going to ignore pain whenever you can, and then you're going to do Colossal Smash into another overpower, into a Sharpened Blade, into a Spear of Bash, into a big more strike, and then you can just continue the onslaught with an Avatar Blade Storm, try to do ignore pain as well, overpower, more strike, execute, and that's a lot of damage, guys. That is a lot of damage, and it is practically unstoppable if you're doing it correctly. But what you want to do is actually just keep the onslaught, and again, the more rage you're going to spend, the more easy you will have another go for you. For example, now we have Blade Storm. What you want to do is Blade Storm into a Colossal Smash, into a Sharpened Blade, more strike, for example, or here a execute into a Sharpened Blade, more strike, bam, that's a lot of damage, and that's without Avatar. A lot of damage. So again, we're doing some impressive damage. Again, more strike is a bit skewed. You can just remove 30% of the damage. That's pretty much it. But it's also skewed to the positive, because you have also a lot of modifiers in PvP towards more strike that are not applied to the PvP dummy. So the reality is probably 20% less, something like that, which is still doing a lot of damage for you. It's like 160k crits, which is noticeable if you're actually on the receiving end. Overpower, doing a lot of crit damage, doing a lot of normal hit damage. We have Blaze Storm doing like 36k, and again, this is like without modifiers. The dummy doesn't work on modifiers, unfortunately, but the modifier on Blaze Storm is 40% increase, so you can actually add 40% to Blaze Storm, and that is the reality of the damage that you can have on the enemies. Again, depending on physicality of the armor that they have, and depending on the DRs that they have, and depending on the versatility they have. That will be also modified, but also for you, you're going to do more damage as well. Rend is doing some pitiful damage. It is what it is. We are not building around Rend. Spear of Bashing is doing some okay damage. One Spear of Bashing did 194k. It's close to the reality, but the reality is people are going to walk out. That's why you have to use Spear of Bashing at the right time. You're not going to use it in the opener, but whenever Priest is doing a fade, that is the moment when you're going to go for a go. Closer Smash doing some okay damage, and Dreadnought again adds up the damage of Overpower, so basically doing 20% increased damage on Overpower. And a reminder, it is AoE, so you're going to cleave even more, and that's actually a good thing. It's also, Arm Story is actually balanced around cleave as well, because you have sweeping strikes. So in single target, you will still do less damage than in AoE situations, where you can sweeping strike into doing a lot of overpower damage and more strike damage. I'm going to show you guys the rotation again. So I'm going to charge, overpower. I'm going to try to Blaze Storm now. We have two overpower stacks. I'm going to Colossal Smash into a execute with a Sharpened Blade, into a Spear of Bash, and into a big more strike, into another Avatar Blade Storm. We have a bigger Avatar right now, and we can do some pretty hefty damage right now. Double overpower into a big more strike. Bam, 150k without crit. And this is like a lot of damage. People are not going to survive if they are on the receiving end. 220k crit on execute, guys. This is very, very close to reality if you're like unstopped, having full buffed, and it is going to do that much damage. Of course, the stars has to align. The same for a full moon of a balanced druid, but whenever it does, this is like a little winning game for you if you're actually doing an execute of that amplitude. Of course, you have to crit, but even if you're not critting, it's still like 100k normal hit, which is going to be pretty nasty. I think even higher for normal hit. We have all normal hits, more strike actually going average 136k. Again, it's a bit skewed. You can just remove 20% of it, and that's pretty much the reality of it. Spear of Bashing doing some good damage, Melee is doing some good damage, Dreadnought doing some good damage, and also Colossal Smash. And reminder that the CDs are coming up very quickly, and the onslaught never really ends for arms, or you're always going to deal a lot of damage. And since you have double trinket from human, if you only have one trinket, it is just what it is. But if you have double trinket, it can actually result to a one-hit KO, which is quite nice as well. But anyways, this is like the rotation. I want to talk about the macros really quickly. The macros I'm using is the simple macros, but it doesn't really exist for this build because you cannot really go out of Blazestorm, but you always want to have cancel aura Blazestorm. You cannot cancel aura Blazestorm with this build because Hurricane doesn't let you do it, but you don't really want to do it. Your Blazestorm is doing a lot of damage with this build. It actually is meant to do a Blazestorm full duration amount of damage. If you actually can do a full duration Blazestorm, it adds up. You have Stormbolts, the same. Everything about cancel aura whenever you actually are using a thing that is actually very needed. Party 2, Party 1 intervene. We have the burst avatar, which is not working with this build because if you're pressing avatar, it only does the trinket and avatar because obviously you are not cluster smashing while you are in spear of bash while you are in a Blazestorm. Pretty much, and the same for Spear of Bastion. You cannot really do that. I play with at player Spear of Bastion, so it doesn't miss at melee. So, for example, if I use it very quickly, I can actually do that together, which is quite nice as well. I'm thinking. I use also Riding Cry, Last Stand, Bitter Immunity, but that is like something for a protection of warriors. And those are pretty much my macros, which are pretty basic. You can also use focus macros, but again, Stormbolt for me is on the main target always, and my pummel always tries to go for the main target if I'm going for the caster, and I can always top target for the pummel if I can, but of course, if you can actually use the focus macros, that's probably the better for you. So this is pretty much the full explanation, the full guide about Arms Warrior. I'm actually very thirsty right now. I will make more videos about the solo shuffle experience of this build. It's actually a very, very fun build, and I recommend you guys to test it. You're going to get frustrated by playing Warrior. I even played Warrior yesterday on live stream, and I got frustrated as well. It just is what it is. Some like some lobbies are just not meant to be, and that's probably the best way to say about Arms Warrior. And if you want to have the maximum fun as an Arms Warrior, I would recommend to just jump into trees where you can actually choose your allies and have a great time. But in Shuffle, it just is not meant for you. Like I would say, the class, not for you as a player. So sometimes you're going to lose and feel like you did everything right, and it most likely is. You don't really have everything in your hands in Shuffle, but especially as an Arms Warrior, where your CC is limited, your damage is also limited depending on the roots, snares, and spells, and sometimes it is just not enough to actually have uptime because of the classes that you're facing. Anyhow, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. If you watch till the end, that is actually a very big thing. You are a huge supporter, and I love you for this. Of course, Arms Warrior, it's insane, but watch the Fury PvP guide I'm going to put out Friday. It is going to be insane. I have like 3 builds for you guys, and it's going to be a huge value. It's also going to be a long video. I lose my voice every time I'm going to do that, but those are the videos I'm enjoying the most. So hopefully you do also enjoy it. If you watch till the end, please comment that you watched till the end, and I will appreciate you, and also comment back. If you have questions, please do shout. If you have comments, please do shout. If you have remarks, please do shout. It is very important to let you know in the comments, and I will for sure see you in the next video or live stream. And yeah, be safe and have a great day. Bye.